because it's the right thing to do, because that's what God tells us to do.
And you feel that, like you feel the right thing to do, like without a shadow of a doubt. Welcome to the Savage Server Podcast. My name is Nick.
My name's Jason. Today we're going to go over a verse that has been on my mind this week that we were discussing. So we just thought that we could we'd go through it, kind of what it means to each of us. So we kind of have a different view on it. So
a little bit.
We just wanted to bring it up. James chapter 4, verse 17. If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them.
So to me, to put it just very plainly black and white, it means like if you know the right thing to do and you see the right thing to do and you don't do it, that's a sin. Whether that's like helping someone, even helping yourself, not essentially just from, a biblical point of view, but just in general as a human being. Like, say you see some elderly lady walk into her car and, she's putting her stuff in her car and one of the bags bursts open and stuff just starts rolling all over the parking lot. You're parked right next to her. You just get in your car and take off. Like, that's not the right thing to do.
So you did the wrong thing.
You did the wrong thing. So the right thing would be to get up, obviously run over there, pick up her stuff, help her put her away, make sure she's okay, and, goes about her business. But,
okay. Yeah, I think, so for me, it is more of just the things you don't do, the little things you don't do, that God is giving you like a nudge to do. So I guess it's similar. It's just not doing, like, I didn't bring in the part of doing the wrong thing. All the things that God tells you to do or gives you a passion for, or gives you a heart for that you don't do, those things end up being sins as well, right? We talked about this in one of the previous episodes when we were saying that when you die and you go see God, He shows you all the things that you did do that you shouldn't have done. You knew that they were wrong. You did these things, right? These are your sins. Because you believe in Jesus Christ, you accept Him as your Savior. These are the things He washed away for you.
Yeah.
Then He shows you, these are all the things I tried to tell you to do, and you ignored me. You didn't do it. Maybe you didn't even do the wrong thing. Maybe you just didn't do that thing.
Yeah.
Starting your own business that He gave you a passion for, something that would have helped the world, or something of that nature, right? And He forgives you of all those things too. But that's that secondary pile of it that I think is so sinister, because we don't think of it like it's something we're not doing.
Like to be given a gift and not use it?
I think that that's a piece of it.
Yeah.
But I think that it's so much easier to see the sins that we know we shouldn't do, but we do anyways, right? Like all the basics, all the killing, stealing, adultery, all those things are the basics. Like those are the things that you can see are wrong, and we do them anyways. Like in times of weakness, or we do the wrong things. Yeah. But I think that this always reminds me of the things that God tells me to do that I'm too afraid to do.
Yeah. I think right now, being at the point where I'm at personally, before, like you had mentioned, like, hey, don't do that. And within yourself, this is the wrong thing to do, but it serves me in some way, so I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Those things are kind of like wiped off the table now, because it's just like they don't even get mentioned. You don't even think about them where it comes to like cheating, lying, manipulating, doing just the major sins like you had talked about. Now for me, it's, well, did God give me a gift in some way that I'm not utilizing? And is that being a sin, not tapping into that and doing that more, or pursuing it because of fear, lack of self-confidence, whatever it may be, and not go down that route.
Yeah, and God has given you those tools for a reason, is what I think. And you're wasting things that He's given you. You're not listening to the Spirit, right? He's given us the Spirit as His gift to try to, it's the Spirit of God in us in order to help guide us.
Yeah.
And so those pulls towards things, sometimes we don't listen. Sometimes we don't hear it because we're not listening for it, but sometimes we hear it and we choose to not follow it.
What's one example that you could think of, like in your own life, where that's kind of popping up? Or
So for me, God was telling me for a long time to quit my job. And I make good money there, and but it was harming my family.
yeah,
The amount of hours that I worked, the stress of being in the environment that it was, it was stressful. It was something that took a toll on me every day. You see people die every day. Like it over time, and not just people die, but like dealing with people that are so ungrateful,
yeah,
and that try to fight you for trying to help them, right?
Yeah.
You know this, like it takes a toll on you, and it makes you see people differently. On the street, seeing someone, I would think differently about them than I would naturally, like, just on my own, because of all the experiences that I've had. So God had put it on my heart that I needed to get out of it. I needed to build my business and get my family separate, and it was going to be better for my family. It was going to be better for me. And for a long time, I was really scared to move forward and really put the energy and time in on business that, because I was afraid to fail.
yeah,
And it was like, well, if I don't take it super serious, it's like I didn't put it all in. So like I could have done it. Like it wasn't me. It was, I just didn't put all my effort into it. And so that's been really hard, or that was really hard for me to take that jump, to pull that trigger. And God kept telling me, He kept telling me that if I'm going to be serious about it, I needed a pressure and I needed fear. And so He kept telling me over and over again, like, you just put in notice. Like, it doesn't matter like what amount of notice, put in a notice.
Yeah.
Like, give a hard date. This is when I'm done here. And He kept it kept coming up. So I was at a men's retreat, and I had already had this thought on my heart, and we have this big discussion of what are some things that God is telling you to do that you are not following, that you've heard His voice, or you've heard, like, you've felt the pull and you're not pulling the trigger. What's something that you're not doing? And this was what I had the thought of. And I said, you know what, like, I really need to do this. It's true. Like, I need to fix this. And then I didn't do it. I still didn't do it for another month. And then I was in my men's small group one morning, and the same question got brought up after a sermon that we had. And it made me think of it again. And one of the guys that was in my group, one of my small group at the men's retreat, he was in my men's small group.
yeah,
And he looks at me, and this is like, I'm grateful for him, because he was like, hey, didn't you say? And I was like, yeah, I did. And he's a great guy. We've had, he used to be a pastor at another church, and he's since retired, but he was like, hey, he was doing it really genuinely, but it was kind of a call out for me. You know, like, you said this is something God, and I was like, yeah, I need to do this. And I said it in front of everybody. I said, this is like something I said I was going to do. And, you know, and he helped me through that too. He, you know, he was like, you know, like, I know you can do it. We're going to be praying for you. But if you think that God's telling you to do this, you should do it. And it took that. And then the next day I said, okay, I put in a date that was far enough in advance that I felt like I could get there, but was close enough to really scare me.
yeah,
And so I did that, and I felt like this weight off my shoulders when I did it.
like there was an end in sight.
It was that, and it was, I had felt guilty for not following it. Like, I knew that I should have done it.
Yeah,
I had even verbalized, God wants me to do this. And then I didn't do it.
yeah,
So clearly I knew what I was supposed to do.
yeah. And it all goes back to that, you know, faith over fear kind of a thing.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that gets called into question in that situation is, okay, how much do you really believe in me? Because the security of that job, do I believe in God less than I believe in the company that I work for?
Yeah.
I almost said the company. Do I believe in God more than that system? Like,
Yeah.
because I mean, I guess in that way you're almost placing your employer in the place of God.
Oh, you're placing the money that it provides.
Well, the security,
Yeah,
right?
that's all it is.
You're giving.
You're not
that,
putting anybody in a position above you, priority over God, because at the end of the day, the security that comes with that paycheck every week that it provides your family with, a living roof over your head, closing your back, food in your mouth. That's what you're fearful of not having.
Mm-hmm.
That security blanket.
Well, and it reminds me of people that have spouses that they know they should, not even spouses, partners, like boyfriend or girlfriend, right? Mm-hmm. And they're not following God, that spouse or that partner. And I shouldn't say spouse, because I think that spouse is a different situation. If you're married, I think that you have a different responsibility to continue to be with that person and to help them find their way to God. Mm-hmm. But if you're in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship or you're dating somebody, especially in the beginning, and you see that they're not following God and they're bringing you into different situations that make you stray from God, and you choose to continue down that road, and God's telling you, you need to, this isn't the way you're supposed to go.
Yeah.
Like you should break up with this person. And I guess this is an example of also doing the wrong thing too, right? Like, this is not only not doing what God's telling you to do, but it's doing what you shouldn't be doing. But it reminds me of that, because you're placing that person above God in that situation.
True. Side note to something you just said. You think you should break up with that person, or do you think you should step into more of the role of being the leader as far as, taking the relationship down a certain path and seeing if that person kind of comes along into that way, that belief, or if they have something that's there, it starts to come to the surface more, and they start to have that sense of guidance and safety within you because of the path you're trying to lead yourself on, that they can follow along. Mm-hmm. You think that's like,
I see,
jumping the gun too much? Being like, oh, you don't believe this, you don't think that way, bye.
No, I think so. It depends on if you're married. I think
marriage is a different story.
Yeah, you've promised the guy that you're
on the same page. I mean, essentially,
if you're dating, if you're new down the journey, to be like to finding God and being in relation with God and making that your soul, like your main thing, right? Like, you should place God above everyone else. I think it's extremely difficult for you to do that, to bring someone else along for the ride, especially when you're in the very beginning of it. I think you can. I think that it really depends on your discipline, your self-control, how your own relationship with God. If you can do that without getting pulled into situations and getting brought into temptation by someone else, more power to you. I don't think that I was ever in a place when I was single to do that. I think that when I was single and I was still trying to find my way to a full life in God, if someone was going the wrong way, I was like, oh, well, let's go see how this looks like fun. Yeah. And it was dumb, and it did a lot of damage to me in the short term. It did a lot of damage to me in the long term. So I don't think it's your responsibility to do that while you're still trying to find your own way. I think that...
You don't think that's part of the journey, though?
I think the Great Commission, being able to, making disciples and leading others to God, I think you have to be sound in your foundation before you can do that.
Well, I agree to a certain point, but I think that if there's someone in your life that wants to walk the path with you or sees it as more of a positive influence in their life, me personally, I wouldn't say like, hey, look, I'm not far enough down this road yet to really even be trying to, bring anybody along with it. Because I think one of the things that I've come to understand about God and my relationship with Him is that each one of us is kind of like our own shepherd. Like each one of us has the capability of bringing people in that want to learn, have yet to learn, or are going through a really dark point in their life that you can very much relate to. And to say, hey, look, I know you're following a road that seems very self-serving, very pleasurable, very addicting. But that is a bottomless pit that cannot be filled with nothing and no one and no act. Yeah. So you have to kind of have to tread your own way,
So in the situation you're bringing up, then that person is wanting to come along with you, though, right?
Oh, and maybe in a certain, if they got to that point, but even the person's that's not open to it, like you're still like, say, you have somebody in your life that's going down the wrong path, and they know they're going down the wrong path. You can see it, you tell them about it, but you're that, constant in that going down your own road in their life that like, my buddy Jason, he's, going through all this stuff, but he's marching right along and, following that path. Man, I just want to try to be more like that. Or, I'm in a bad place, and they get like sparks in their life.
That I can appreciate. So what I'm thinking of, I think we're thinking of two different situations. What I'm saying you should walk away from is if someone is not willing to go down that path at this moment.
If they make it like,
and they're going to bring you into.
If they make a hard decision to be like, no, this isn't for me, this isn't my life, and
say you both like you do things the wrong way together, and you choose to start going down the right path, and they're not willing to follow you down the right path, and they're making it harder for you to stay on the right path. That's what I'm trying to describe, I guess.
No, and you're right.
It's hard to do new things with old people. If they're willing to do the new things with you, and they're willing to go down that path with you, and I think if you start to go down that path, if you're dating somebody, you absolutely should tell them what you're doing and try to bring them with you. I think at a certain point it comes to they're not willing to go down this path, they're not interested in it. And so because of that, I need to space myself away from this person so that I can be closer to God. Because at that point, that person has already been at a certain place in your life. You've placed them in a certain hierarchy, and you're trying to bring God into that. It's very difficult for you to then bring God above that person when you've already placed them. Does that make sense?
It does. But I will have to say,
I'm not saying it can't be done. It's just difficult.
No, two things. You're right. Nothing is impossible with God, and I firmly believe that. No matter what the situation is in life, no matter what your relationship is like, and everyone can change.
Correct, yeah.
To say that, because this person's done this, doesn't mean that you can't have a relationship with that person. You can't have a marriage with that person, because that road of broken pieces that brought you two together to a certain point was to show you that look how much you can overcome. Look where you can come from and still see the good in that person, and then, water that every day, and then watch that just take over their lives.
Oh, I completely agree.
So to say, for some people to have it in their mind that their significant other is incapable of change, or they're not going to make mistakes along the way, they're going to trip and fall forward. They're still falling forward. They're still getting up and trying. You have to have some grace, patience, love, and understanding, because no one's perfect.
No, I agree. And I think that has happened in my life. Me and my wife, we met. We were both on the wrong path. And because we both wanted to get down the right path, we helped each other get there. And we're continuing to help each other see the issues that we have and see the mistakes we're making. And that's what a real partner does, right? But that was the only thing I was saying, was if somebody is trying to go down the wrong path and they're not willing to follow you down the correct one, it's at a certain point you have to make sure you're doing the right thing, because the verse, I mean, this is the exact verse. If you know the good you ought to do and don't do it, no matter what the reasoning is,
Yeah.
it's the wrong thing. And that's what it brings me back to, because it's so hard to do the right thing with just your own fear.
Yeah.
And that's like, that's what it is. It's doing the hard things because they're the right things.
As the leader of your household, whether you're a single parent, whether you're in a marriage, that responsibility falls on your shoulders, and that fear gets intensified immensely. And it can either keep you in a comfortable rut or have an overwhelming effect to where it just forces you out of where you're at, and you're like, I don't have a choice. I have to do this.
Yeah. But when it's the integrity thing, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I think that's where integrity comes out of, is knowing what you're supposed to do and doing the right thing. Not doing, like, if you don't do the right thing, even if you're not doing the wrong thing,
but if you ain't doing the right thing,
it's still the wrong thing.
Exactly. And the biggest part of that is doing it even when no one's around.
Yeah. That's
Like accountability when you are by yourself, having to answer to yourself is the biggest thing I could say for me in my life. Like, you know, best analogy I could use for this is like what you eat in private, you're going to wear in public. Like if you're cheating on your diet or something, like whatever you're snacking on.
That's funny.
What's that?
I've never heard that. That's funny.
Yeah, whatever you're snacking on, like you're telling everybody like you're doing all this great stuff and blah, blah, blah. But like you go home and you're just eating like trash and you're by yourself, but then you go out in public, like it doesn't look like you've changed much in the direction that you want to. People could see that and they really don't believe your words. So it's what you do when you're by yourself is ultimately how you carry yourself throughout your entire day in front of, you know, people, family, friends, whomever.
Yeah.
But that is the biggest turning point, I think, as an individual that you'll see when you start down this path, is that when you're holding yourself accountable, when you're by yourself, whatever it is, either fighting an addiction, not saying something that you would have said before, like in an argument, like on a phone call or text, or just getting away from those old habits. And that is a demon, and that is a battle that no one knows about but you. And that is a huge, huge thing. And I think that we as men don't talk about it enough amongst ourselves to bring it into, you know, the light of like, you know, today, man, like, I didn't do this. And like, you know, good job. You know, I think that's something that needs to be talked about more.
How do you keep that in mind when no one is there? Like, how do you keep yourself accountable to what God is telling you? Like, what are the thoughts that go through your head?
Before, I did not have, when I used to be the terrible person in my mind that I was, I didn't care what rule I was breaking, what I was thinking, because I was very much pleasure seeking, because I had this pit, that I was trying to fill every day. Once I realized that I could just get rid of the pit and I didn't have anything to fill up anymore, I didn't feel that need to go after pleasure seeking things. I didn't have that need or desire to look at certain things online or, you know, get validation from, you know, multiple women, you know, about, you know, how they felt about me or thought about me. And I didn't have to spread my heart out to just fill myself with these things that ultimately at the end of the day didn't make me feel any better. So when I finally got to the point where I was at that crossroads, and, you know, to me, in my mind, I've found the one woman that I want to be with, no matter what the current state of the situation or what we've gone through, and I still do to this day. I could see so clearly down a road that used to be just so filled with fog that I don't have that want, need, or desire anymore to face those demons. Like, the devil knows that I know what he's doing. Like, you know, before he would, you know, put this in front of me, I'd be like, oh, hey, go attention seek, go get that. And I'm like, nah, I don't even care.
So what do you think the biggest thing that you did to fill that void was?
I got rid of the void. I realized that the only reason that hole existed is because I put it there. I put that hole there based on my trauma of the past, not dealing with my own feelings on a day-to-day basis, thinking that I needed something outside of myself to make myself better instead of turning around, looking in the mirror, and realizing like all the demons that I had made my entire life were sitting there looking over my shoulder in this mirror, and all I had to do was just break it. And like, I don't need you anymore. You don't serve any purpose. You've only drugged me to the lowest parts of my life that I've ever been into. And I don't need you anymore. And then you have to slowly just you put down the shovel and you start crawling out of that hole instead of digging yourself out. And you have to build yourself up from the ground, like I said, from the ground up. You have to come up with your own, code of ethics, your own set of morals. The only things that you stand behind, like, what do I really care about? Who do I really care about? Why do I really care about them? And then once you start going down that path, I don't have addictions anymore. I don't have temptations. I don't have lust. I don't have desire. I have very clear in my heart and in my mind who I want to be with, who I want to be, and continue to walk down that road. I don't feel that anymore. And it's such a freeing feeling. Like, you don't have those things on your back. Like, you just devote your time, love, and attention to the people that you care about most, yourself included. And that's it. And then I don't even find myself in situations where like I want and need those like lustful desires anymore. But I will say this, I find myself being hungry at 3 a.m. and having it out, like staring at a piece of pizza in the refrigerator. But that's about it. Like, that is the depth of my, battling things that I used to have to go through on a daily basis.
The things that you should do, but you didn't.
Exactly. And I just, they don't exist anymore. And the hardest thing is not trying to convince yourself of that. It's trying to convince the people that you hurt along the way of those things. Because there's a lot of trust that's broken. Not that it can't be repaired and something amazing can't come of it. But it just takes consistent time, love, and effort. And some people might look at you and be like, oh, you're doing this for the wrong reasons. You're doing this, because you're trying to get back together, whatever the case may be. But in your heart, if you know you're doing it for the right reasons and just loving that person and loving yourself and loving the people that you hurt, to try to, yes, make amends, but also show them that you're worthy of their time, love, and attention, and that you want to give all of yourself to them, as you do with your daughter and your wife. I think that's all you can do.
Yeah, I think doing it because it's the right thing to do, because that's what God tells us to do.
And you feel that. Like, you feel the right thing to do. Like, without a shadow of a doubt. Like, if I go to the gas station and I see somebody that's begging, and it's just down and out, like, before I'd be like, get a job or whatever, back then. Now I'm just like, I have an overwhelming need to be like, look, I'm not here to judge you. I don't know why, but the right thing right now is, if you're hungry and I have the means to give you something to help satiate that for the moment, I'm not going to deny you of that. I don't care what anybody says. And that's just something that, like an example, like, it's just like the right thing to do.
And if God is pulling you to do that, I think that it's hard to combat the things that God's telling you to do. Like, if God's telling you to do that, there's not a reason why you shouldn't. And
exactly.
No matter how somebody else sees it, if you're doing the things that God tells you to do, just because somebody else doesn't need to do them, or God's not telling them to do those things, doesn't mean it's wrong for you. Maybe you need to learn something out of that situation. Maybe you need to learn more patience, more love, more kindness, more compassion. All those things, I think that God teaches us each separately. And I think that's one of the things that people have the hardest time with, is I don't think that's the right thing to do, because it's not the right thing to do for me. Like, God's not telling me to do that, so why are you doing that?
Exactly. And that's where we judge others.
Well, it's hard to see everybody else's
point of view. Yeah.
Well, path. Like, God teaches us each separately. Like, I screwed up a ton to learn the lessons that I had to learn.
Same.
And I think that other people looking at that could have been like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
But God used everything to put me in a situation where I understood more, and where I could help others get through those things now. Like, in the way that I work with our church and do the men's stuff, it's all been useful to me, because I can relate to people that have had to go through those things.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question there real quick. Looking back, because we have similar backgrounds, what feels better? Having that pleasure for the moment that you had with, whatever it was that you were seeking at the moment, or doing something right now? Which feels better?
doing something right always has felt better.
Doesn't it feel more fulfilling though? Like, don't you feel just better? It used to be so cliche. Like,
so it feels better because I don't have a guilt with it. Like, things that are short acting were always something that, sure, during the moment it felt like a good thing.
Yeah.
But then immediately afterwards, you feel 10 times worse than you did
100%.
before. And so it's like the devil uses something good to give you something worse. And he's constantly trying to figure out a way to bring you lower. Mm-hmm. And you do the right thing, you're bringing yourself higher, and then you feel better about it even. And so it's not only one, like, it's like going from taking one step up to 3 steps down to taking 2 steps up every time.
Yeah.
And I don't know how else to describe it, because at the end of the day, laying in bed, you know what's right. And this is what we said when we were talking about, would you help somebody in a active shooting situation or something like that? Like, those are the things that at the end of the day, you know what's right, and you have to live with it. And I think that's what the verse is. The verse is about, you know what's right to do. You know what God's telling you to do. Are you going to do it?
Yeah.
And every time you don't do it, you walk further away from God.
Yeah. I think a clear conscience is the best place to rest your head at night.
Absolutely.
And I have had that for quite some time, and it's better than I ever thought it could be. I never thought I could get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, I still struggle with all sorts of things. So I think that the days that I do the right thing are definitely my best days. Yeah,
hands down. And I think a lot of my best days come from doing things that I love for the people that I love. Mm-hmm. That's hands down, whether it's my daughter, my family, my significant other, her kids, friends, whatever. I mean, there's such an immense amount of good that you get in return from doing something for someone just for the sake of like loving them and wanting to take care of them and see them happy. And that's enough for you. Okay. Well. All right. Well,
thanks for tuning in today. We are going to continue to explore verses and other topics that are on our mind. We appreciate you going down this journey with us. Until next time,
be a savage,
be a servant.